Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Using Imagery to Drive Action on Projects. This webinar is brought to you by AGC and proudly sponsored by Procore. As everyone is still dialing in today, please make note that today's webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recorded presentation will be emailed to you within a few business days. We have a great presentation for you today, and if you have any questions for our speakers, we encourage you to submit your questions at any time throughout the presentation by using the chat box on the side of your screen. For a brief introduction today, we have with us Eric Tucker, the Business Development Manager at Procore, Jackson Dyer, the Head of Customer Success at Hanger, Matt Daly, the CEO at Jobsite, and John Andrus, the Operations Technology Manager with Andrus Construction. We'll give it over to them to introduce themselves and their companies a little bit more. With that, I'd like to hand it over to Eric to get started with the introductions.
Awesome. Thanks, Bree. And hello, AGC, and thanks everybody for joining us today. We're talking about photo and video documentation. Coming from the Procore app marketplace team, we've seen a ton of energy in the market going towards better site documentation, and it's really never been more affordable or easy to get images of your projects. So we're going to explore how this is done in practice and how to drive resolution on projects. And I'm personally really excited about this. We've invited Andrus Construction and two of our partners. So Jackson Dyer heads up customer success at Hanger. He's going to be walking you through a little of that product and their drone integration with Procore. Then we have Matt Daly, co-founder and CEO of Jobsite, and he's going to be walking through SiteWalk and their 360 image solution. And then John Andrus is going to wrap it up and actually talk about how he uses Hanger and Jobsite together on top of Procore, and how they actually put it in practice and how that works at Andrus Construction. So start out, just going to quickly go over Procore. So for those of you who haven't heard of us, and primarily so we have context as we introduce how resolution is driven on projects with imagery, and how Andrus uses both Hanger and Jobsite. So really we bring together people, projects, and strategy and systems in one platform. And it starts with the drawings in Procore. Then you sort of bring everyone together from foremen to owners to PMs with our unlimited user model. Everyone can access the project on their phone or tablet. And of course, we open up the platform via APIs, so your technology all flows back to the system of record. Procore platform is organized into 4 main product lines, all integrated, including over 100 partner applications in the Procore app marketplace, two of which you'll hear from today. Diving into each of the product lines, project management, this is all your typical construction documents like RFIs and submittals. Change events also originates in our project management solution. Going into quality and safety, this brings in things like inspections and observations and being able to fill them out on mobile devices from the field. Construction financials, this is where your budgets, change orders, contracts, forecasting. Also, our accounting integrations are tightly connected with our construction financial solution. And then finally, a new product for Procore is our field productivity platform, which is great for self-performing contractors that need more detailed labor tracking and productivity reporting. Ultimately, we come back to the users. So all the people working on a given project, and that's kind of what brings us to our topic today. So photos and videos. Let's talk about photos and videos. Procore's made a big bet on photos and videos. So yeah, we have photos in the Photos tool. Great for basically organizing albums, taking individual photos on the job site. But we've actually put photos in just about every single tool we can within the construction platform that is Procore. So whether that's a daily log or you're taking a picture as a part of an incident that happened, perhaps an inspection that's requiring imagery out of you. John's going to talk about that later in the presentation. But again, almost every tool in Procore is connected with photos, and they're all integrated with one another. So if you're taking a picture that's coming in through an observation and then bringing that into an RFI, all the way perhaps that's generating some sort of change event, and through the change management process, you actually have photo documentation that is connecting all of that. And we know that these tools aren't the end of imagery, right? And the mobile applications and phones and tablets and that are working on the Procore native platforms aren't the end of imagery, right? There's tons of different programs out there when it comes to site cams, 360 cams, all sorts of innovative developers. And so we've opened up all of Procore to them via our APIs, and they access it through this developer portal here. So again, site cams, drones, phones, 360 cameras, even DSLRs that are all uploaded into Procore. So we've never really seen more lenses on construction projects. This year alone, 40 million photo and video uploads to the Procore platform, and it's growing exponentially. And we don't think it'll level off anytime soon. So many of you have probably saw this picture floating around of Spot from Boston Dynamics. It's been the famous robot dog, and it made its way into a construction project this year. And so this is a big problem that we have to solve with all this imagery and actually making it useful in construction projects. So a quick overview of kind of how we think about this in the Procore platform. You have all these different sources of imagery integrated with the Procore platform coming in as observations. Two things happen in Procore. There's assignment and workflow. So these are sort of the two attributes. So workflow meaning one of those tools that we looked at in some of the Procore product modules before, whether that's an observation, an RFI workflow, a change event. These are reportable workflows that are part of your construction process. Also assignment. We talked about all the unlimited users that we have in Procore, whether it's an owner, an architect, a subcontractor. Assigning this imagery as soon as it gets into Procore is part of that workflow. So once assigned, that stakeholder can either escalate it to an RFI or a potential change order. Maybe they can drive it to corrective action right away. Both of these options are available in Procore. Ultimately driving to resolution. We have a best practice where if there's an issue raised by a photo and you actually take corrective action on it, you better take another photo to resolve it. Ultimately, this product loop is allowing for resolution on the job site and reportability. So our project manager here can actually check things off the list and report on total resolution. And so with that, we're going to have a Hanger Instruction Site, two of our partners that have integrated with these workflows, sort of talk about their process and kind of their unique technology. And later on, John Andrews is going to talk about how Andrews Construction has leveraged these as well. So with that, I'll hand it over to Jackson at Hanger.
So my name's Jackson. I appreciate that, Eric. Really appreciate the opportunity to present to the AGC audience alongside construction site and one of our favorite enterprise clients, Andrews Construction. My name is Jackson Dyer. I lead client success here at Hanger, and I work closely with our top construction clients to deliver aerial insights using the Hanger platform and suite of products that we offer our customers. If you're unfamiliar, Hanger is a leading drone technology and data management platform for enterprise. Ultimately, we provide consistent and reliable project photo documentation for construction teams. And we capture that autonomously using some of the core IP that we've developed in-house, but also a robust network of licensed operators. And we have a few partnerships in place to help deliver on that as well. As we capture data, everything's delivered through a shareable interface. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about that and how that integrates into Procore. And I'll save some of the meat of the conversation for John to share on how that's actually being applied to a project. Awesome. So we're a relatively young company. Ultimately, just in a few short years, we've seen a number of clients come to Hanger. Been really grateful and fortunate to work with them. So leading general contractors, owners, developers, and even other specific trades that see value in the drone data we're able to provide. We're still looking for partners to help take the company to the next level, and ultimately we're rapidly expanding and the ENR 400, finding a lot of success in helping companies scale their drone program from 1 or 2 project sites to their entire project portfolio. You can go ahead and move to the next slide. So there are a few key areas that we think are most important to focus on. So, I could go into different features and things that are unique to the Hanger platform, but I think focusing on these higher level areas is really time well spent today. So one of the things that we've seen in the industry is that at least data collected from drones, it's inconsistent. To Eric's point, there's an exponentially increasing number of photos being captured on construction sites today. How do you utilize and make sense of that information? There are different people taking these photos from different types of equipment. It's fragmented. There are service providers that provide different levels of quality, and the costs may vary from state to state. And for a larger construction client, that might actually be harder to forecast and incorporate into your business model. Furthermore, there's other important considerations to make sure that the data is being captured appropriately. I think we might have gotten ahead of ourselves here at a slide. If you guys want to go back one. So on the topic of data, ultimately good data in means good decisions out. So at Hanger, we use a powerful autonomous flight engine to capture that data consistently across your project sites. So a project in Dallas, Texas is going to be getting very similar data set to a project that might be in California. And regardless of the skill level of the operator, you're able to easily dispatch and fly that mission to capture very consistent imagery and different points of interest around the site, especially as the site continues to change. That is all rolled up into an interface, which brings me to the next middle section here, labeled Insights. You can actually roll up multiple data types, so multiple 360s, image series, maps, elevations into a shareable interface, which integrates directly within Procore. And then the last point I want to touch on here is scale. So how do you ensure that you're going to consistently be able to deliver the same results across all of your projects at scale? There's a lot of things that Hanger is solving for our clients right now. So solving the airspace and regulatory issues. We're tracking operations at the most granular level. So whether you're flying in-house or using our services to capture that data, we can report on that in a way that makes sense for your business. And then we're aggregating that all up into these really great portfolio map-based views, and that provides a single consistent source for all of your aerial data. Again, the whole thought here is to develop a process for your construction team to fall into, and then be able to rely on that data when it matters most. And what we're really trying to focus on is building out interfaces that provide unique perspectives to make these observations and integrate these workflows to sort of feed into the things that Eric talked about before. So the assignment and workflow and the integration within Procore tools to make sure that these visual observations can be fed into sort of a structured data warehouse, if you will, to be tracked and managed so that the actual value can be achieved, which is, corrective action. If you want to go to the next slide here, so we have to make it easy, first and foremost, to collect this data. So this is just a quick GIF that we put together for how a construction client can easily right-click with a few clicks, upload a site plan, determine where the data needs to be captured, and set the points of interest. Our system will take care of all the rest, look for airspace, cross-reference that, find an operator, plan up the mission, and dispatch that person to go capture the data on a repeat schedule that we determine from the actual project schedule that's given to us. Once that data has been captured, we roll it up into the Jobsite interface. So when I say the word job site, I'm most likely referring to the actual product that we deliver to our end client. This is what feeds directly into Procore and can be accessed from the project dashboard in the project leak section. Again, Jobsite's a shareable web viewer, so it integrates directly with Procore. You can also use it as a standalone web link, and it rolls up several 360s, image series, which I'll talk about in a second. We can even do point cloud and video, aerial maps, and elevations from that same interface. Ultimately, what the Jobsite interface is providing from a user experience standpoint is just entirely new perspectives. And we tend to use this analogy around Hanger. The analogy is ultimately the pylon cam in the NFL. So initially, the pylon cams were actually disputed by some teams. They've actually become an indispensable tool for NFL teams and officials to use this photo evidence to really determine the the course of the game itself. So this is an example where Odell Beckham Jr., fun guy to watch, scored a touchdown. The officials at first ruled that he was out of bounds and then reversed the call after they used the conclusive evidence that was offered through the pylon cam. We take a more proactive approach to capturing data for construction sites, and ultimately, you're not going to know what issues are going to arise on a construction site. You might have a good hunch, but if you're capturing proactively, consistent imagery day in, day out, that imagery is there when you need it. You can fall into a process and truly rely on it, easily access it, and just know that it's consistent across all of your sites. All right, so next slide. I'm going to breeze through the rest here and get to the end before I turn it over to Matt. So there are a few things that we've found are ultimately the standardized, most valuable asset types within the Jobsite interface. So there's orthomosaic aerial maps, 360 photos, and image series. Many of you might be familiar with aerial maps captured from drones. This is one of the first use cases, really powerful data type. What you're actually looking at is the Jobsite interface and an aerial map that provides, sub-inch accuracies, super high resolution. You can zoom in and get a lot of detail here. And the GIF is actually showing a linear or area measurement. So John's going to, I think, talk to some of these points and how this tool is being used. Ultimately, these annotations and saved measurements or observations can be fed directly into Procore as well. And I'm not sure if it's shown in this GIF recording here, but from this, we also extract digital elevation and surface models. And so you can toggle between different data layers and do some pretty interesting things. The next one is an image series. So this is an example of one of John's projects, actually, the Virgin Hotel up in Dallas. We're using this interval, we call it a contextual image series. Essentially, it's a series of images taken at a specific interval. We do several passes around the building, depending on sort of the use case or application for how we want to use it. This is a QA/QC example, so we're able to easily navigate up, down, left, right, and pinpoint the areas of the building that we want to inspect, perhaps looking at window installation or waterproofing. Lots of really, really interesting things. Maybe you just want to provide better owner visibility and provide progress photos. You can use those around the perimeter of the site and get some really great, unique views from almost any perspective. So it's not just 4 photos being delivered to you. It's a few hundred in this case that you can use in pretty creative ways to drive value on your project. And last but not least, probably my favorite asset type is the 360 photo, and specifically the Hangar 360 photo. So ultimately what these are these very high resolution images, 20 megapixel images that are stitched together, and they provide a fully immersive view from basically any point of interest. We covered that on the order request. So the user actually decides where they put these 360 photos and at what altitude. They allow for really, really great change detection using the timeline on the bottom. So what you're actually looking at here is 2 different 360s taken from the same spot. We've even taken this imagery out and done some time-lapse stuff with it. It's pretty cool ways to use this after the fact too. We also provide annotations within this 360, and it allows the user to make these observations, have some interactive tools for presenting things in a meeting, and really get a point across with some visual context. So as you might have noticed, we're not just providing imagery, we're providing a number of tools on top of that. So just here's a quick list of things that you can do within the Jobsite interface: measurements, tools, annotations, snapshots. And we're building dialogue forms ultimately to pull information from Procore to assign and document your observation right from the photo itself, and then push that into the Procore system where it can be tracked and managed to be followed through. So the most important thing is, again, pushing that data back into Procore. You can actually move to the next slide. So the integration that we have with Procore today allows for the job site viewer to be accessed easily through the project links section of the dashboard. We actually authenticate through Procore as well, so we don't require a Hangar login. You actually would log in through Procore. So any Procore user that's been added to that project can easily access that link there from the link section. It's a bidirectional API integration, so we're pulling information from Procore. So in this instance, we're looking at an observation request. So an observation was made from a 360 photo. We're able to assign that observation to a user, title it, give it a description, set a location, and then push that directly to the photo section within Procore, but also create the observation in doing that as well. So a little bit of automation workflow involved that should help save time and really allow you to make those observations and push it directly there, right at the source in just a couple of clicks. I think John is going to talk to some of the things that I'm going to cover here, but I wanted to cover at a high level some of the areas of interest where we see the most value being driven, at least for construction clients. So ultimately there's a number of ways that these are being used. We're seeing some really, really great stuff with QA/QC. There's been some amazing safety catches that we've seen, pre-bid analysis and client pursuit. Of course, communicating complex site logistics and planning during the earlier phases of construction, all through utility coordination. Of course, risk mitigation and documenting things like pre-pour inspections or edge of slab inspections for vertical builds. And then project closeout and marketing, of course. Drones are still being used for marketing. So just on the topic of communicating progress, there's been some really interesting examples where we found, without knowing what these issues were, areas where the 360 photos have provided photo documentation of some pretty substantial issues on construction sites. So this is one of our first clients. Engelberth Construction had observed a 2-inch depression in the slab. These are 360 photos placed strategically there. We did not know this issue was going to arise on the job site, obviously. Did not know the root cause of it, and it was unclear as to what the root cause of the issue was. We actually used the timeline in the 360 photos to go back in time, zoom in, and have multiple perspectives from different angles of the exact same area where the slab was going to have to be demoed back. We were able to determine the root cause and remediate that issue much faster with the client. And we even went a step ahead here in this demo. We used one of the 360 annotations to point out where the area of interest was. So you're not just looking at a photo, you actually have some annotations that can be pinpoint the area where the focus will be during the conversation. So here's another example. I think John's going to talk to this one. So production tracking, productivity tracking. There was a joint venture. There was sod was laid on this particular area where the orange circle is highlighting, and contractor A had laid the sod. Contractor B had an additional scope of work and actually was going out to plant trees. Ruined all the sod with their equipment, and we used the measurement tool to determine how much material needed to be purchased and where that needed to arrive on site. Just helped solve the issue much more quickly. Last but not least, I'm going to cover QA/QC documentation. Again, we've had some really, really great ROI stories on this topic. So what we're actually looking at is a saved observation or snapshot. Looks like it got a little jumbled here, but we're using the image series to pinpoint various angles of the building facade. From that, we're able to save those observations. And so we had a really great example of an edge of slab inspection with a high-rise build out in Miami. The ISA anchor receivers had been installed in the wrong locations, and then a follow-on trade had plastered over those. To remediate that issue manually would have taken a couple of weeks. Contractor also had a warranty on the building, making things worse. And so ultimately, we were able to photo document each floor of the building and show exactly where these issues had occurred at. Ultimately, document and put a plan of action together and resolve that issue much more quickly than we would have before. We were told it saved anywhere from $150,000 to $250,000 for that contractor on that job, and resolve the issue much more quickly than they could have otherwise. So really great things. I think John will speak to some of these. I'm not sure that we have any other slides after this, so I'll go ahead and turn it over to Matt Daly to talk about some of the interior captures.
Guys, can you hear me?
Good, Matt.
Good deal. Thank you. Cool. So yeah, guys, thanks, Jackson. I appreciate it. My name is Matt Daly, co-founder and CEO of Struction Sites, and gonna shift gears a little bit here and talk to you guys about automating your site documentation, but this time focusing a little bit more on the interiors. So obviously we just saw some great stuff about what's going on in the exteriors, and sure enough and soon enough, I think drones will be flying around inside as well. So we're going to talk about some stuff you can do today to get that data in a very fast and efficient manner on the inside, and then talk a little bit about what you can do with it later on. The first thing that I want to do as well is just give you guys a sense of, I guess my background. Currently, working for a company called Faro Technologies for 9 years, and spent several of those years helping contractors implement 3D laser scanning workflows for doing QA/QC and monitoring on job sites. It's actually where I met one of my co-founders who was working as a project engineer at a large general contractor, and spent, again, several years implementing these sort of like high-end, high accuracy measurements, 3D workflows to monitor job sites. And it wasn't until 360 cameras came out that the cost and sort of availability of imagery really started to skyrocket, at least for us. So sort of as recently as 2017, you have the sort of standard and still very common method of capturing imagery, which is walking out onto the site, take a picture with your phone or a mobile device, and store that. In 2018, I think you started to see this massive shift towards capturing 360 images with the reference on a floor plan. So you not only have the entire context of what you're seeing, you also have the location on a drawing so that you know where it is. What we're going to talk about at the end here, before I turn it over to John to talk about some real world use cases, is kind of where this is going, and actually some things that already work today, as far as automating not just the capture itself, but actually using some artificial intelligence to be able to tell us what has been installed relative to the schedule, and determining risks and all sorts of things like that. So with that, I'm going to jump into our next piece here. Well, I guess, so the old process, right? You guys all know what this is, and this is, I'm going to say it's the old process, but it's the today process too. There's still tons of this happening, nothing wrong with it necessarily, but documenting a job site in this way has traditionally created very little value for the actual people who are doing the work, right? Maybe you needed that imagery, maybe you didn't. It was more of just, you were sort of covering yourself just in case you needed to come back and visit that information later, and very often you would end up with something like this. If I go back one slide, a series of images sitting in a folder somewhere. I'm sure many of you have seen this. And I think at this point, I've got a video to show you guys that I do need to jump onto my screen. Are you guys able to make me the presenter? Cool, awesome. Cool, so I think what you guys hopefully can see here is a 360 video of a job site. So instead of having to take static pictures on a site, what you've got is a user with a camera, nothing but a camera, so no LiDAR, no GPS, just walking a job site, recording 360 video. And what we're able to do is use a little bit of photogrammetry, computer vision, and map this onto a drawing for you, so that as you're walking the site, capturing it, what you're getting is sort of this like Google Street View type version of your job that you can then remotely visit, tour, and actually what you're going to see in a second, which is starting to create a little bit more value with this information. So what do you get when you actually produce a video walk? You get something like this. So you've got your green dot on the left-hand side, which shows you the beginning of your walk. You've got a red dot that shows you the end of the walk. And you've got all these little orange dots in between, which actually allow you to jump in and remotely visit that particular spot on the job site as if you had visited it. Or as if you were walking it again. So you're able to sort of move back and forth and look all around in these spaces. And that's great. Obviously, documentation in and of itself is valuable, just so that, as I mentioned earlier, you can revisit certain things. But I think that where things really start to get interesting is when you connect this to your project management system and your Procore environment, right? So that's great. We have images, we know where they are, we know what I'm looking at. But so one of the other things that's sort of very similar to what you just saw with what Jackson was showing you is you have the ability to create RFIs and observations from directly within the Struction Site platform that are bidirectionally synced with your Procore environment. So you notice that I'm pulling up, people, responsible contractors, everything that you would normally see. I might create a draft there. And now that lives, including the Procore logo with, so that it's a Procore RFI. When you view it, it's actually going to bring you back into the Procore environment. If you want to go full round trip, come back into the Struction Site environment because you're looking for a little more context on what was here and what was shown. You're able to, there's a link provided at the bottom in the RFI itself that will send you back to that 360 image, looking at that direction, also showing you where you are on a drawing. All right, awesome. So let's just quickly wrap the plugin to Procore piece up as far as the different areas where we integrate with Procore. One of them is, of course, login credentials, allowing you to log in with your Procore credentials. The drawings are synced so that any revisions made in Procore will show up in Struction Site. We just walked you through RFIs and observations, so you get a sense of how that works. And then, of course, the photos application, we take the photos that we're collecting here and round trip them back into Procore so that they can be delivered and handed over to the owner as part of that sort of system of record handover package. So I promised you guys at the beginning that we talk a little bit about where this is going, and I want to share sort of that next step with you guys and some of the stuff that we're working on that is available today in a sort of limited capacity, and that is taking the same computer vision technology that was used to stitch the video into a path, but then also starting to detect things within that video frame. So we have a 360 image with position and a direction on a drawing. And what that allows us to do when we detect the presence of and the location of framing, drywall, ducting, pipe, that we can actually locate those things relative to what should be installed on the drawing, which allows us to produce many deliverables, but one of them being this, which is where you have a legend down here that shows you blue is framing, orange is drywall, and what is actually framed and what has actually got drywall or sheetrock up, and then of course change over time. So in this case, you're seeing not only your percentages of completion, but you'll also be seeing your velocities, meaning how quickly you're moving, which ultimately allows you to determine schedule risk and if you're going to make the schedule or not. So a lot of different things that we can do with this. And of course, at the executive level, the real value is being able to aggregate this data across projects and start to get a better understanding of contractor performance over time and across projects. So yeah, that's a quick look at where this is headed. I think we're pretty excited about it. But John's going to bring us back to earth here with a lot of what's really happening today, and that's available, commercially, and how he's integrating these different technologies in his Procore environment.
Okay, so with Struction Site, it's a lower cost, much better solution, mainly because it's our guys on site that are taking these pictures now, which is a better QA/QC process in my opinion, because it's actually making sure that our guys are going and checking that things are complete when they are saying that we're ready to pour concrete or that we are ready to sheetrock. And then Hanger, they're providing the consistent aerial capture, so we don't have to worry about if capture is going to be getting done all the time. We can go back and look at our historical data through what Hanger provides us. And Procore is kind of the glue that brings everything together. They're the backbone to this process that I'll talk about a little bit more in a second. So some of the benefits, like they've gone over, it allows us to quickly capture progress and document specific milestones. Something that Matt was getting towards about the video walk is that those 2 slides that he didn't get to present on, I'll spoil it. It's working towards tracking progress on framing and sheetrock. So it's things that you're not even going to have to really have a guy spend a ton of time doing, but these systems are going to automate your process on the project and help you out with this capture and with the data that you're getting out of it. Hanger, gives us the tools to track production rate and progress from one capture to the next using a timeline. So we actually use it. I'll talk about that on another slide actually. And so Procore is the glue, like I said, that holds it all together. We actually have inspections on Procore. It's my favorite tool on Procore. And at the bottom of our inspections, we say, did you take your 360 photos using Struction Site, or has Hanger been out to capture? And those are critical to our process. That way we're ensuring that those are driven home every single day on the inspections and is just part of the process. So some real world examples, right? So we use both Hanger, Struction Site, and Procore. And so when you're actually capturing the same thing using multiple systems, you're able to solve a problem like this where, electrical conduit in this PT slab is, pretty messy. It has to go a bunch of different ways and they cross lines a lot of times. And at the end of the day, the electrician actually forgot to label the conduit. So we were actually able to pull up Hanger and Struction Site and use them to figure out, where did the conduit start and where does it go to, and trace that all the way back so that we didn't actually have to stop and pull a line through or blow a line through, or even worse, let the electrician just guess, right? So this is solving real problems out in the field in real time. Something that we use Hanger and Struction Site both for would be our meetings. We use Hanger a lot in our OAC meetings, and our owners are loving to follow it because they can see the overall progress of the site. you're seeing the macro stuff get built. You're seeing the detail of the concrete pours, the detail of the exterior progression. And then we have construction site, which is a little bit more inside, it's run at our own pace. And it's used a lot in subcontractor meetings where there's discussion about what's actually happening in the field, what our field condition is. Is it ready for work to be done in a unit, or is there trash in the way? What is the real example of what it is in the field right then? So rather than having to come back and table a discussion and go back out in the field afterwards and look, if you've got capture that's pretty recent, you can just do it right there from within the meeting and not have to do anything after. So this is kind of what Jackson was alluding to earlier. Tracking framing production rates. We use it to track decking, joists, and framing all the same kind of place. And this is really useful when you're doing wood construction, so that you can figure out, if your production rate is going to meet your schedule, and if not, then maybe you need to get more guys out there. So this is actually something that's really neat to be able to use the tools that Hanger's providing to drive some actual value. We're also using some of the other volumetrics tools through Hanger on pre-construction to figure out what the topo of the land looks like, what kind of dirt volumes are on site, so that way we can be better prepared and let our subcontractors know what the actual conditions are on site. So then 360 photos on construction site. One of my favorite things is being able to make these notes. So they actually tie into the 360 photo. So as I'm reviewing them, or the project manager, or even the project administrator over that project is reviewing these photos just on daily, weekly, not really even a scheduled thing, but just reviewing photos. If you find an issue, you can mark it and tag it as a note, and it kind of works like Slack or Instagram or Twitter, where you can actually @ someone and it'll notify them that you've written a note. So where I've got this orange dot in here, that's actually a note that I tagged to someone, said, is that being fixed? It looks like it was a pipe that was going through some wood studs to make sure that it doesn't break when the building settles. This can be used for pinched ductwork and ceilings, like this one, holes not being oversized, or even possible safety hazards. If your safety crew is actually watching these pictures, we've used it to notify the guys on site about safety risks that are not moving.
Thanks so much, John. That was great. And thank you all as well to Jackson and Matt and Eric. Thanks for talking about your technologies. More than that, thank you for just showing how much value people can get on their job sites by really taking these images, any images really, and going beyond just static files of images to really making it useful for project teams or any other team to utilize those images and data. So we're going to move into our question and answer session with our panelists. Please send in your questions. We have plenty of time to get through your questions today, whether it's for our presenters, their technologies, questions for John and how they use any of these or any other insights you may have. We're going to go ahead and get started with one of these that came in. Looks like this one is more for John. How do you guys set this up at your company, and what were you guys doing before?
Yeah, so kind of how it works. I kind of set up all the Hanger jobs. So once it's in pre-construction, I set it up in World, which is their dashboard for being able to see all of our projects and kind of get it ready for the project to go on and take from that point on. With construction site, we start out there and have either our office engineer, or if we have one ready, an assistant superintendent or a superintendent, go out and do site conditions, existing conditions with 360 on construction site. So they're kind of the ones that are taking the 360 photos on site, would be the assistant supers. So, you know, what were we doing before? I guess we were the old school method, and then kind of a blend of the old school SD cards, and you know, a lot of people had pictures living on their camera rolls, on their iPhones and stuff, and that's just impossible to go back and sort through all those photos. I'm living that right now on an old project that we didn't have these construction site and hangar on, but we outsourced to a third party before this, but they just the pictures were never what we needed.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much. This one is from James. If I have my own drone pilots on a handful of sites, how does that work? How does that change any of these?
Yeah, this is Jackson. I can take that one. So, you know, we're agnostic to sort of the drone strategy that you've built out to date. So a lot of people are using their own pilots internally, or using ours, or a combination of both, sort of a hybrid solution. So, you know, not much changes in terms of the workflow. We call it the request and receive workflow. So essentially, there's a hangar account. You'd add users, and we define user roles within an organization to be sort of the administrator of an account, similar to other software tools. Depending on how you want to structure, you know, we have flexible workflows available to you, but how you want to structure that is up to you. The main thing that needs to happen is that the order request needs to get in the system. The basic mission plan needs to be established, and site needs to be identified. So what would happen is the order request would be put in through a user on the client side, be planned up by us primarily, or if we want to entertain a discussion of you have the skill set and resources for doing that in-house, you can also allow our clients to do that. A mission would be geotagged and basically stamped in over that project site, and your internal operators would show up, launch the Hangar app, and hit a button. The drone would take off and execute that mission, upload the data, process it, and deliver a job site through Procore if the integration's been enabled. So it's pretty straightforward. There's an order request at the front end that needs to get entered into the system, and from that point on, a PIN would show up for you to claim, just like an Uber driver would claim a ride share that's being requested.
This is Eric. I think I'd like to point the same question towards Matt, but phrase it a little bit differently. Obviously, on the drone side, there's some investment and some logistics around flying drones. Other than the price of a solution like Struction Site, what would a contractor need to think about for deploying a handheld 360 camera or Sitewalk type solution? Is it just the cameras? Is it the software? Maybe you could speak to a bit about the time and attention required to actually make it valuable.
Yeah, I mean, I can share what we've experienced on our side as far as supporting customers, and even John maybe could expand more on that. I think earlier you heard him talk about basically having an office engineer and or a superintendent, but obviously the camera equipment is important. Not all 360 cameras are created equal, so there are some that are relatively low cost, that are really easy to deploy, but also maybe are good for photos only. And those might be in the $80 to $300 range. There's cameras that fall into the $300 to $1,000 range that might be better for some of the automated video capture that we talked about. But like resource-wise, I think the companies who do the best at this always tend to have somebody who sort of takes the reins and creates a process around documentation and really builds it into the schedule, so that it's a scheduled activity as opposed to something that just sort of happens haphazardly. And so usually, the companies that are most successful doing this are the ones that figure out how to schedule it in a way so that it's never taking any one person's time more than an hour a week at the very most. And so that way, like spreading it out like that sort of allows you to take advantage of everybody on your team and crowdsource the information. Get it from PEs, superintendents, other people who have different scopes of work. They're sort of covering different parts of the job they're walking. Spread it out among those people, and you'll be much more successful. And also build it into the schedule. That's also been something that we saw, that we've seen successful companies do. I don't know if you want to expand on that at all, John.
No, I think that's great. Yeah, I'd say that we have both the cheaper version and the more expensive Garmin Verbs. I don't know if I'm allowed to plug stuff, but yeah, we've got Ricoh Thetas and Garmin Verbs. And they both have their uses, right? Stills, with the Ricoh are fine, but now that we're getting into video walk stuff, you have to have the more expensive cameras. You don't really need to have everyone on the job site have a 360 camera. Like Matt said, if everyone's sharing and just doing 1 hour a week of scheduling some time to go and walk their area, it's very easy for everybody to share one 360, because at the end of the day, their iPhone also works on construction site to take photos too, as problems just occur or they notice something that they want to actually capture. So not everyone has to have a 360 camera on them all the time.
Great, thank you all. That was a great answer to that question. We had a few come in from Hall, so I'm going to try to combine them here. Let's start with this one. Aside from using images and video for data and kind of job site analysis and productivity, are companies also using this for perhaps marketing purposes and pursuing that aspect of their business as well?
Yeah, so I think the marketing side would probably be more of the hangar photos here, and Hangar's they do a great job on some of that. There's something that they promote, I guess, is one of their things. It's a Constructolapse, kind of funny name, but a really cool tool. So every time they come out to the job, on a few of our jobs, they're flying a video, and because of all their technology, they're able to fly that same path each time. And that's the same deal with every time they're on site. They're flying the same exact path, so everything's from the same place. But that video, they're actually able to stitch all those videos together and create a time-lapse, Constructolapse video. So it's actually spinning around your project and building it as it goes up. I wish we had a video of that, Jackson, to show everybody, but it's really cool to see, and it's really powerful to owners and just as a marketing piece.
We'll share one of those on LinkedIn for everybody after this one. I think we did Marriott Uptown with you recently, John.
Yep.
Well, that's great. Thank you. No, that's great to hear that there's obviously a lot of value you can get from it, from the project to just marketing as well. So this one, we're actually going to jump to this question that came in from Jarrett. He'd like to know, what size or value of project do you use to classify as being able to benefit from this approach? I suppose another way of asking that is sort of what size projects, what type of projects, what scale for companies do you see getting the most use out of these technologies?
Sure. So I guess that's me again. So kind of my mindset on technology and construction, and especially these technologies, all three of Procore, Hangar, and Construction Site, is that the benefit really is when it's on all of our projects. No project's too small in my eyes for you to be documented really well. A problem can equally occur on a small project that is $18 million or a giant project that's $150 or $200 million. An issue is going to hurt you no matter what. And actually, it's probably going to hurt you a little bit more on the smaller projects, because it's still going to be a big issue and you're not going to have as much fee in there. So I wouldn't say there's a threshold of project size. We're using this on wood construction, like you saw, concrete towers, adaptive reuse, senior living, everything. And I really do think that the benefit really comes from having it on every project. That's all I got.
No, that was great. Thank you. That's a really insightful answer to that question. We're going to jump over to a question from Ahmed. Excuse me if I mispronounced your name there, but he's curious to know, it looks like perhaps we'll have Matt start with this. Is there a way to integrate this, pictures and information, with the most common BIM platforms like Revit and ArchiCAD?
Yeah, definitely. Didn't really touch on that, and was thinking more about the sort of AI aspect to this, but definitely one of the things that we do is integrate this with an Autodesk product called Navisworks. So that's basically the most commonly used BIM coordination platform out there in the market today. I know there are others, but so there is a way that you can, what we do is we allow the user to basically select points, whether they're grid line intersections or other sort of like very trustworthy points on a 2D drawing, and then click on those points and assign coordinates to those that are in reference to the actual model coordinate system. And in doing that, all the data that's captured on the drawing is now rotated and translated into the coordinate system of your model, which means that actually when you upload a Navisworks NWD file, we can import that information into Struction Site, and you can do a side-by-side view of your coordinated model with your existing condition, and then all of that information actually we save that as an image the same way we save a standard image, so that information can also sort of be funneled back into the Procore environment. So you have both 360 images of what was really built and 360 images of what the design said was going to be out there. You see people doing a lot of as-builting with that.
That's great. Thank you so much. We're going to jump back to Hall's second question here. And we're just about at the top of the hour, so this will be our final Q&A question. If we didn't get to yours, we'll try to have our panelists follow up with you afterwards. Likewise, you are welcome to still reach out to them, reach out to AGC with any other questions you had on today's presentation. So this last question here is, what's the best way to get companies to adopt new tech like this? Seems like a lot of companies are still set in the good old ways club, and they are afraid of adopting new tech. How do you overcome this and demonstrate the value in tech like this?
I mean, that's all I do. I go to a lot of conferences. I guess I test a lot of technologies and a lot of different things. And I don't know really what the question is here, but yeah, I think everyone needs to be really forward thinking in the technologies you're using and the processes you're implementing. We can't stay static in what we've always done and what we always have thought was the right way to do things, especially with the new generation coming up. I think these are tools that have to be used in order to continue to keep the millennial generation wanting to join into construction and they make that their career. So I really do think that technology is something that we need to be, focused on in our industry.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah, and that could almost be a whole webinar in itself. So thank you, John. It was well, once again, thank you to all our panelists today. It really was insightful to hear from all of you. So thank you, Jackson, John, Matt, Eric. Thank you for everyone who tuned in to today's webinar. We hope that you got to see some insights here and just be able to envision how that can work on your projects or take your projects and see how you can be driving more action and getting the most productivity there. We'd like to say thank you for AGC allowing us to sponsor today's event. As a reminder, a link to today's presentation will be emailed to you within a few business days, so you can keep an eye out for that if you want to catch any of this again. Once again, you're welcome to reach out to any of today's presenters. With that, we'd like to just say thank you and have a great rest of your day.